do you want?
I don't want anything from you.
I won't resist anymore.
You don't got. There's nothing to resist. I'm a nice guy.
Just give him back.
Give who back? Get away from me. Get away. Hey, what's happening to your fucking hand? I'm so sorry. I barely touched her. I love women. I love women. I'm out of here. I'm a little late to this game. Fuck it, I don't even care, let's talk about it. The story in this game is a mixed bag. I think the characters, the setting, the overall tone and atmosphere is really, really well done. The main character, Senua, obviously deals with some kind of schizophrenic disorder, which really plays a huge part in the game. The first half of this game is a complete bore. I was actually contemplating suicide. I thought I was gonna kill myself because how boring the first half of this game is. Nothing really happens, the progression's very, very, very slow, but the second half of this game, the game really, and I mean really, picks up. It's paced way better than the first half. Stuff actually happens in the game that's important and you feel the connection to Senua way more in the second half than you do in the first half. And even though I found the actual ending of the game to be rather anticlimactic, it made sense and the payoff was there. So with the overall story and how it's executed, just think of the game Dante's Inferno or the book, but instead of the Crusades, it's Nordic times. Instead of hell, it's Helheim. Instead of a boy, it's a girl. Even though the first half of this game is really boring and repetitive, it does redeem itself in the second half, with the final act really, really saving this game. So the gameplay, the meat and potatoes of any fucking game you'll ever play in your life. This is the most important aspect of any game. And unfortunately, the gameplay here is such a boring fucking... I personally believe that the gameplay is the most important part of a game. You're pretty much just doing two things in Hellblade. Well, three technically. One half of the game is exploration and puzzle based. The other half is combat. The puzzles in this game are literally filler. They could have cut half of these puzzles and the game would have been better for it. It's already a pretty short game lasting around 6 to 7 hours to complete. And the puzzles in this game just make an already short game feel longer in the worst possible way. They're just so boring. They're not even clever half the time. Half of the puzzles should have been cut from this game. It just ruins the pacing of a lot of these locations. Combat's a little bit more interesting, but not as impressive as previous Team Ninja titles. You just have a basic light attack, heavy attack, run, dash, yada yada. But it's executed really well. You feel the momentum, you feel the hits. The enemy variety is pretty mediocre. I think there's only about 3 or 4 enemy types, excluding the 3 bosses you fight in this game. But the combat is fun enough, and it's a nice change of pace from the really slow, monotonous puzzles. It's a shame because the puzzle mechanic they have here is interesting enough. It's just not executed well enough. It's not fleshed out enough as it needs to be. It just becomes repetitive and monotonous and you don't want to do half of these puzzles. And even though the combat is passable, it is average, it could have been fleshed out even more. It could have challenged you more in the first half of this game. The whole concept of you losing your save data if Senua's curse reaches up to her head is complete bullshit. If you honestly lost your save data from that because you've died so many times, you should just stop playing video games because that's embarrassing. I died maybe 3 or 4 times on the hardest difficulty. This game is not that challenging. They only start throwing a bunch of enemies at you near the end of the game, and that's when you're already really familiar with the combat system. The combat really, really hurts this game's overall score, overall enjoyment, because it's so boring and monotonous half the time. But the presentation, let me tell you about this game's fucking presentation. It is its saving grace. The presentation in this game saves the entire fucking game. The sound design, the sound editing, it's so fucking good. The graphics, the low budget AAA game is really well done as well. The locations, again, in the first half aren't that varied, but the second half things get really interesting, really dark, really gritty, and the sound design's always just tip top fuckity notch, and I loved every second of it. The voices Senua hears in her head are just disturbing half the time. Sometimes they help you, sometimes they make fun of you, sometimes they just do nothing. It's so interesting. It's never been done in a game before, at least that I've played. The way this game juggles mental disorders and guilt and loss and anger and all these kind of emotions is something I've never experienced in a game before. And it really, really elevates this game into something really special, even though the gameplay and story isn't really that unique. You need to play this game with headphones. It truly changes the entire game. It's something you can't really describe. It's just something you have to play and see for yourself. The facial capture on Senua's character and all the other characters are really well done. The actress who played Senua did a remarkable job here. You feel pretty much every single drop of pain and sadness she goes through, and it at least makes you feel bad for her. I didn't really care for Senua, I just felt bad for her, and there's a difference, okay? Shut up! The presentation in this game is truly the game's saving grace, and I can't stress it enough. It's so well handled and executed.
What's happening?
Senua, imagine a sword that can slay gods.
So even though this game's presentation is phenomenal and the story here is told well enough and executed well enough, the gameplay just lowers this game. I'm giving this a 7 out of 10. It's still a good game. It's a game that I think everyone who plays games should at least experience because it is unique. It's truly a mixed bag for me. I think the presentation here is something I've never seen in the game before. And even though the story as a concept is rather average and unoriginal, it's told in such a unique way, and the setting and the atmosphere and the dialogue and the characters are really well executed. It helps this game rise above just being an average game. So yeah, that's it. Bye.
A gaze averted from life. You ran from it but brought it nearer.